Welcome to Faith Over Breakfast. You are listening to a podcast by Pastor Eric Deepen and Pastor Andy Littleton. If you enjoy Faith Over Breakfast, we encourage you to rate it on the Apple Podcast app, on Spotify, or Google Play. Thank you and enjoy the podcast.
Welcome to Faith Over Breakfast. My name is Andy Littleton, and I'm sitting with Eric Deepen. I'm from the Mission, not the Mission. That's what other people say. I'm with Mission Church.
Mission Church.
Eric is with The Village.
The Village.
The article.
The article.
And we had a true Faith Over Breakfast discussion.
You actually had breakfast beforehand.
That's the difference.
So there's a smell in here of breakfast.
Of turkey, sausage, and egg. Mm-hmm. And I was hoping avocado.
But no.
There was no avocado. I opened it up and...
So you were sad.
So I was a little sad. So the true Faith Over Breakfast smell led to the true Faith Over Breakfast conversation. And this is a good moment to say, what is this podcast? We say it every once in a while.
You
two
say
pastors. I think it's good.
It is good.
The concept here is two pastors sit down for a breakfast table conversation, and we just let the conversation roll. This is not a plan. We don't have an objective for you. We're inviting you to sit at the table and hear the kind of things we would talk about. So the presenting topic is John Mark Comer. Somehow we find our way into the distinctions between biblical and systematic theology. We talk about being cool and what that has to do with things. Toward the end, culture and how it affects your thinking. There's more.
Yeah.
The conversation goes where it goes.
Yeah. I would say it's a relatively amateurish conversation about biblical theology.
But, sure, yeah.
But anyway, for us,
yeah,
we're amateurs.
Considering what we're capable of, it's an amateurist conversation. So we hope you enjoy.
Yeah, we do. And I would just like to say, I noticed, I listened to the last podcast. It's like maybe the first time I didn't actually say your name. I just said, I am sitting here with my colleague.
My colleague. Oh, okay.
So thank you, colleague, for being here with me.
Glad to be collegial.
All right. Enjoy, guys.
Sure. Whatever. The John Mark Comer phenomena. So
the Bridgetown phenomenon.
The Bridgetown.
The Bible Project.
Just made me think of an old LL Cool J song. Remember it?
I don't.
Something like a phenomena.
Okay, I vaguely remember that.
You do.
Vaguely.
See?
It's like sort of heard it on the radio.
It pretty much includes him saying something like a phenomena over and over.
And over.
Yeah.
Okay.
Including some other things.
I really disliked rap, so I was not.
But if you had to listen to rap, would you listen to LL Cool J?
I don't know.
Do you know what LL Cool J stands for?
No.
Oh, okay.
I don't know anything. I mean, I don't know anything about rap.
Man, what an admission. What an admission to start off the podcast.
Makes me kind of not cool with the millennials and the Gen Zers because
they don't.
Rap spread pretty crazy through their culture.
Yeah. Well, but also now you're alt, you're different. You're not into rap, so you're the alternative figure, the non-rap guy.
I'm the non-rap guy.
Yeah.
Just give me the music of the early 90s.
The early 90s.
And I'll be fine.
That's right.
Give me some Soundgarden.
Soundgarden.
Give me some Nirvana.
There you go. Yeah. It's all.
Yeah.
You're
icing
fine.
on the cake was Stained for a little later.
Oh, yeah.
Just in case I forgot what the 90s were like. I can.
Yeah. Yeah, good. Okay. Well, speaking of the 90s, John Mark Comer was probably born in the 90s. No. What? No, 80s.
That we are older than John Mark Comer.
I don't know. Maybe we're about the same.
I'm 52.
So maybe he's right in the middle of us. This, you know what? Does this matter?
Yes. Okay, here we go,
It might matter.
How old is John Mark Comer?
John Mark Comer is 44
Oh, he is between us. Okay, a couple years older than me, about similar age. He definitely knows about LL Cool J.
Yeah, he's a cultural kind of fanatic guy.
The cultural fanatic guy.
I don't know.
LL Cool J or
Yeah.
John Mark Comer?
John Mark Comer. I don't know. Okay, so
J.M.
so let's say thank you,
Coomer J.
Coomer J. Let's say thank you to Colleen, who was like, great podcast. Love you guys. Love the one about eating together and community, and
Yeah.
just talked about how it, her comment had a lot to do with eating together when we're not all capable of eating in the same way because
Right.
of our disabilities and those kinds of things, and the beauty of that and sitting at a table together and in each other's mess while eating together. So I thought that was beautiful, and she thanked us for our podcast.
Thank
And
you
then
for thanking us.
You
and
also
Angie.
sent me a text.
Oh yeah, I just showed you another positive. Now I know, if we keep talking about Angie on the air, she's going to stop supporting us and saying
Angie, I'm
because
sorry.
she doesn't like to be highlighted a lot. So her name from now on is Beatrice.
Beatrice. Thank you,
Yeah,
Beatrice.
thank you, Beatrice.
Anyway.
Yeah,
Okay, we won't. We just appreciate that you appreciate us, and so that's good. Anyway, we are talking about how this new insurgence of practicing the way and of the disciplined life, and sort of the rebirthing and repackaging of Foster and Dallas Willard with a little millennial twist on it all.
yeah. Well, I figured that's where you're going to go because we have discussed this before. So
Sure.
the it's interesting. In my program I'm in, master's program, there is a class coming up where one of Comer's books is the text for that class. And so it is, he's very quickly become kind of the spokesperson for the spiritual disciplines. You and I have talked about it before, and your comment had something to do with this has been done before, but I believe you'd said something to the effect of it needs to be cycled back into, and recast into the newer way of saying things. And so that's kind of how you viewed it. I forget what I said. I think I'm generally, I think there's a lot of good in all of this. It does seem as if there are waves or eras where maybe the church focuses. There's more than this, but it seems like there will be an era where it's the mission, right? We've got to be on the mission. We've got to be doing stuff. We've got to be putting our money where our mouth is and stuff like that. And then there will be more frenetic activity, and then people get really worn out, and then somebody has to come back and say, you need to be in prayer and Sabbath and so on. Everybody's like, yeah, that's right. So no more of this frenetic running around. And then somebody comes back and they're like, yeah, but no. It's supposed to fuel the mission, back to the mission. And to me, I think it's like always all of it. I think maybe it's fine that we swing that pendulum, but the disciplines are sometimes cast as being very personal. Like this is about you and God. And I think that misses the missional side of we do this because we have a calling. But then the calling side often misses the sense that, but doing this without knowing God deeply and being known is also missing the point. It feels like it's all supposed to be integrated. I don't know. I think Comer would probably agree with that. I think. Anyway, so there you go.
Yeah, so I think, I guess I don't know if
he's really cool.
He is cool.
And I think my other big thing is he's just all over social media, which is what he tells me not to be on. So that's kind of confusing.
Right. Well, if you read his books, he has disciplined times to be on the.
That's what it is.
Yeah.
I haven't read enough.
I think the idea is not so much that I think the world is so frenetic and so crazy and so busy I think Christianity has not really given people tangible ways, modern Christianity, to slow down and to live a quiet life.
Totally.
And I think, I think the mission part is kind of misunderstood. I think there is a calling to go and make disciples to all nations, right? And there are apostolic people, but the majority of the call to the people who are practicing the way, so to speak, to use Comer's thing, is they're invited to live a quiet life and to give a reason when asked. They're not necessarily called to go in some place and create a community. They're supposed to make disciples as they go, care and live with their neighbors. And part of what makes you a person who stands out from the culture is when you practice the way of Jesus in very intentional ways, and you come into contact with people that hopefully those intentional ways are talking points, invitations into life with you. You have, your life is so different and your depth of connection to Jesus is attractive, and your actions in the larger community are ones that hopefully bring people to a place where they want to ask questions or want to be part of the rhythms with which you are participating in.
Right.
So, I mean, I think the question that was asked is, why does this resonate with the culture? This kind of the way, the slower, disciplined life, or is it why is there why does Bridgetown, which was John Mark Comer's church and now is Tyler Staton's church, why is it so popular right now? Why is this very intentional mode attracting people?
I wonder about that piece. I wonder if it is the intentional mode. I think it's part of it, but it also is just where there's a lot of really cool people there. It's being a part of that. What other church, if I said Portland church,
Right.
Cool. What other one comes to mind?
What's his name's church from Blue Like Jazz?
Yeah. See, you can't remember, and that's because you're a Gen Xer.
I went to it. Yeah.
Yeah, and its era has
passed on.
Yeah. So it was the cool one there during that time.
Forget what it's called.
Exactly.
But I don't remember names anyway. So
but you remember Bridgetown.
That's just because everybody keeps saying it.
Right. That's my point. So it's the thing.
And probably half of our audience has never even heard of Bridgetown.
No. And well, I'll bet they have actually.
Now they
and look, honestly, if I were to scroll social media, I've got a couple options of I can do the mega loud, kind of Americana persona thing on. If I'm scrolling social media and I'm looking at alternatives of what can I look like as a Christian, there's a few that are very in my face. I don't know about your algorithm, but they're in mine. And the one is here's the Driscoll-esque, Charlie Kirk-esque, America at the core of my faith.
Sure.
Really hyped masculine, over masculine version. And then there's the critic of that. There's the one who's critiquing that, and I can see that. Or there's some dudes from Portland who've got kind of flowy hair, and they talk very intentional and thoughtful, and they're seeking the way of Jesus. And I find personally of the alternatives that I see on social media, I want to be like that. I want to be like those people. And then I've got this problem that I have a slightly different personality than them. And so I'd have to work really hard to
be either one,
to be that cool. And I'd have to wear I used to wear baggy jeans, and then I went to just normal jeans, but I'd have to get back to the baggy jeans and
Well, they wear
grow my
tight
hair out a little bit.
jeans.
I think they're more baggy these
No,
days.
they're tight with the boots, and you see the socks and the.
Because it's Portland, so they've got the Blundstones or whatever. Yeah, and I need to move to today. I could pull it off because it's really cloudy outside.
I mean,
so what I don't mean I'm being very
Right.
ungenerous to John Mark Comer right now, but my point is it's also trendy.
Yeah,
It's trendy right now.
Totally, I understand the trend.
So
it's-
I wonder,
Yeah,
because I think a church like yours has all kinds of disciplines and stuff like that. And if if you could just curate that Instagram, it'd be you.
you think it's all about Instagram, do you?
Or well, maybe some other platform. I'm saying it's really cool, and that's the reason he keeps getting. There's book deals, and I'm not. Hey, maybe you'll be cool. Maybe I'll be cool. It's if you are and you're teaching something good, that's good. But I guess I want to believe it's the practices, but I think it's I have known people that have read the books and felt very good about reading the books. I don't know that they're necessarily as captured by the practices and the God of the practices as they are by the vibe.
Well, I know that there is a few people at the Village who have obviously, a lot of them have read Comer's book or Statton's book, but I think they are attracted to the Village because of what those books say and that we're practicing some of those things, and they want to be part of that.
Were they here and then they found the book and they said that resonates,
No,
or
they
did
had
they
been
read the book and then they found you?
They'd been reading
Okay.
and been doing it for a while before they got here.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think
I generally think it's good stuff. I'm theologically 90% there with Comer or whatever, and it's fun. It's good. It's moving people toward contemplating Jesus. That's good.
Yeah, and I don't know. For me, I don't know if it's so much about the disciplines as it is about a particular set of people with whom I would say are in my tribe when it comes to following Jesus.
Describe your tribe.
Well, my tribe, and for me personally, like that, what it's done, John Mark Comer has pulled together a group of people with whom I would argue I follow. So like the New Testament scholar Naji Gupta, the New Testament scholar who's super famous, N.T. Wright. Then you have Tim Mackey from the Gospel Project, who's also a pretty famous Hebrew and New Testament scholar. Then you have Statton, who's written a number of books and is the pastor at Bridgetown. And you have John Mark Comer, and they do things together. They're connected to the 24/7 prayer movement. They're connected to at least connected to the Boston Table. And so there's this group of people who are what I would call sort of this. They have a particular bent, but it's like I wouldn't call them neo charismatics, but they're like theologically deep, charismatically driven.
But they also don't talk a lot about doctrine. There's things Mackey does,
and so does Statton.
But actually, you know what? Mackey does, but
the reason that they don't is that they're all
way.
Biblical scholars. They're not systematic theologians. They,
distinguish the two.
Well,
because our listeners, as you know,
I'm going to give you the real shorthand version of it. The shorthand version of it is systematic theologians have a set of categories with which they then set their understanding of Scripture in. And so when they would read a particular text, they come with the set of understandings in certain categories, like what you believe about salvation. So you're going to hold on to that as you read a particular text, what you believe about the Holy Spirit or the Trinity. You have a doctrine set out for it.
It's a little more akin to science, meaning that the approach is that there are set categories, and I'm looking for the category, and then I will assign it the category. And so yeah, systematic theology, there are buckets, and you look for Scripture is a search for what things go in what bucket to prove points. So a much more scientific approach.
Yes, and people who are famous for that are Wayne Grudem,
and a lot of
others, but his he's the pinnacle of all that. I think when biblical theology has a lot more to do with one, they tend to weight the context of texts much heavier than their counterparts. But they also are looking for, like, if you were to read, say, First Peter, we're looking at what Peter himself is saying about a bunch of things,
right.
And we're kind of building those categories in Peter's understanding of them. And then we look outside to see what else the Bible says to those categories. We don't bring those. We try to put the scientific categories aside, so to speak, and allow. I'm going to butcher biblical theology, but because it's a little bit more complex and a little bit more nuanced.
Well, and the way I would put it would be that doing biblical theology does not pre-assume the categories were all there. So in a sense, it would be you read the biblical story starting at the beginning, and while there may be truths and stuff, you allow them to be what they were at the time. So there's an assumption that that beliefs develop and grow.
Yes,
so you don't look at when Adam and Eve are told that the serpent's head is going to be crushed. You don't just immediately go, oh, look, that's definitely Jesus. I mean, you might be able to say that the latter people see Jesus in that, and that Jesus is a development of that. But you would also see that Adam and Eve's theology was far simpler, and they were just trusting that God was going to, probably through their firstborn son, save them. That was their assumption. That's all they know. So you're letting it develop, and you're not overstating.
So you're looking more for themes through Scripture,
and developments,
and categories and developments, and the context with which the original people are interpreting the text.
Exactly.
And you begin then to build those out.
Yeah. And most, in my experience, the better theological institutions encourage you to learn both.
Yeah.
Many don't.
I would say if you're in the Reformed camp, you get very little biblical theology. At least in my experience, from Calvin or from any of the Westminsters. And
my experience was that I got a heavy dose from the Reformed world that I'd never gotten anywhere else. But
interesting.
That was
how much N.T. Wright did you read?
Not N.T. Wright, but biblical, but biblical theology.
Okay,
really, but maybe my experience was unique. It was the more developed Presbyterianism seemed to be very into it.
Yeah, well, maybe. My experience of people, and maybe that's true. My experience from interns that I had early on from like Westminster had very little understanding of biblical theology. Mm-hmm. I feel like Reformed people have sort of a disdain for it.
Yeah,
that's been my experience.
Yeah. Which is always good to see. Like, there's within the same quote unquote tradition, you can have a different experience.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah. They're not. It turns out things aren't all monolithic.
Yeah, I mean, and I'll confess that I believe that it's good to have categories, but I think they should be relatively minor. I think in the sense of how you understand, like, that is the intro. It's not the pin. It's not the peak of things. And I think that what my experience, even in the denomination we're in, is that it's very doctrine heavy and category heavy.
Sure.
Our examinations are doctrine heavy, category heavy.
Yeah.
That's that. But anyway, I don't even know where we were going with all of this.
So you were saying that these folks, Comer and such, are more biblical theologians, or Mackey and such.
And they understand systematic theology, and they're all trained,
They when I was saying they're not, Mackey will teach doctrine, but when you watch Bible Project videos, you're not. He doesn't get into a lot of divisive topics. If he brings one up, it's subtle, and you have to and people will argue with him, but they also, that group they don't tend to speak on like too directly to cultural issues. They do a lot more focus on the inner life and the story. And I'm not saying that I relate to that. But I don't see a lot of doctrinal debates coming from them, or there's more ambiguity.
Yeah.
Which is a comfort to some and an irritant to others.
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously it's just more nuanced and subtle in the way that they push on things.
Yeah.
Be more.
Yes.
I feel like they're more like you.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. I'm saying I think they're cool.
Yeah. But I also think they're looking for they want, like, if you listen to, like, for instance, the Bible Project podcast, which is usually an hour, so they'll walk through and talk about the themes of the mountain all the way through the Old Testament, and how it's being referred to and what's happening there. So that's very biblical theology. You're not
absolutely.
He's not tracing, like, here's what salvation is, and then here are all the verses.
Salvation means X. Here's a proof text. Here's a proof text. Here's a proof text. It would be more, here is an image from which that's continually associated with salvation. It begins here, then you see it here, then you see it here, so then you see it here. So when this New Testament author refers to it, they have all that in their mind, and so we need to consider all of that as well.
Right. Yeah. But anyway, I don't know. They approach things very differently. It tends to look different in the way that you practice your faith.
Yeah.
It looks different on how you preach.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
I mean, biblical theologians tend to have a more relational style or relational theology. Not that Reformed people can't.
Yeah. It is so funny because to me, it really is the Reformed world is where I learned biblical theology for the first time. So it's the distinction. I'm still going, to me, it wasn't that. But
really?
Yeah, it is absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And
interesting.
Yeah.
It seems that biblical theology pushes so hard against Reformed thinking that it's just so hard for me to imagine.
And I guess it depends on what Reformed. To me, Reformed thinking
Canons of Dort
included biblical theology. I mean,
this is why. I mean, the most classic one is that John Piper, who is a systematic theologian, thinks that N.T. Wright is destroying the gospel.
Yeah.
Who is a biblical theologian. And when they have a conversation over justification or over the gospel, they're not even talking the same language because they don't. So that's my experience of the two conversations that are happening when that. And I know we're getting all. And
Piper's a Baptist, but he
shows up at every Reformed thing. He's a Reformed Baptist.
Yeah. But the Reformed Baptist denomination would never have him because he's too woke.
Yeah.
Which is wild
nowadays. Yes.
But what was I going to say? Interesting. Yeah, I heard Wright recently talk about how that whole had dissipated in latter years. He hasn't had a lot of pushback from. He's been accepted more in those circles lately. But there definitely was. They had issues on Paul and justification, which is a systematic theology question.
Sure.
Because it's how do you define justification, right? And Wright's not coming at it from a let's gather all the proof texts. He's coming at it from let's understand Paul and his thinking and what he means by this. Yeah.
Yeah. He's like, this is what a first century Jew would think justification is. So when you say it, he's not.
It can't mean what
a 15th century Lutheran.
We can't layer Luther's thinking on justification onto him and then filter that through a Baptist understanding of Luther. Right.
This podcast is getting just
This is so John Mark Comer right now. Comer.
Oh my goodness. I think people are like, why are they talking about these things?
No, but the people love this. This is what the people came for.
They came for this, all of them?
All of them. They're on the edge of their seats.
They don't even know how edge of the seat we are at this moment.
Edge of the cliff.
Oh, goodness.
So, okay. when you see somebody walk in and they've got their copy of John Mark Comer in their hand,
which they never have.
Okay. How do you feel?
I'm happy.
Yeah. Me
That
too.
it makes sense that they would be in our community, or at least
Yeah.
they would be interested in what our community's doing. I mean, like when I read his Practicing the Way and the Ruthless Elimination of Hurry, I was like, oh, this is just the Village.
Yeah.
And in some ways, Village Light.
Yeah. Yeah, it does push a little more on mission. I think the Village is a little more there. To me, yeah, I definitely value what he's saying, and I don't want to be, a hurried person. I think that the only hang up that I maybe have with it is the sense of, if you kind of get these practices right, that's the end goal. Yeah, I just have a little hang up there.
Mm-hmm.
But overall, I think it's a good corrective for people like me.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good movement if it's,
Yeah.
got everything that they're offering what they have, and it's good. And I think they're really trying to figure out how to have a good, strong articulation of what it means to follow the Spirit. They have their Holy Spirit conference every year, and I think they're trying to be a more prayer-oriented community, a people of prayer, which I think is huge.
Do you think that the people that run the conference are feeling unhurried? See, this is my problem.
Jesus didn't feel unhurried. He was hurried.
So this maybe is my little slight qualm, is like, so then there are times when to put on a conference is a lot of work and hurry.
Yeah.
And so sometimes somebody might read this and think, okay, like, I'm not supposed to feel rushed.
Mm-hmm.
And that then things that make you feel that way aren't really the way of Jesus. Is that right? Like, when the Good Samaritan finds the person on the side of the road, is he like in a Zen mode during that time? This is my little question in here, right? Like,
yeah. Well, I mean, if you're supposed to live the peaceful, unhurried life, that's not what he's talking about. I mean, I think they're targeting in particular people who, on average, just have 6 to 7 hours of phone use a day,
right? And who? Totally.
And then and some of it is that they
can't just ever unplug.
Right. Well, and just realizing that this is creating such a disruption in our life.
They're totally right about all of this.
So I don't think they're saying you can't be hurried, but there is an approach of, like, if I'm running a conference, do I believe in the sovereign God?
Right.
Or do I think I'm the one who has to put this on, and it's got to be perfect, and it has to be a certain way, or it won't be a good thing?
And here's what I hope, because everything they put out is really excellently made, and I hope that behind closed doors, all that excellence happens in an unhurried, trusting the Lord way. I hope it does. I want to believe it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what, for all of us, that's the hope. It
Right.
doesn't mean that we're all going to do that. I think when we slow down, it helps us think better, and when we think better, we make better decisions. When our times and energies are oriented towards Jesus as the center of all the things, we end up not making many stupid decisions, because we have our minds lined up with things.
I think the reason I believe the Village practices this so well is because of how unpolished you guys are.
Yeah.
And it's one of the things I struggle with and I don't relate to all the time.
Yeah.
But, like, that is part of why I believe that you move slower and sit with Jesus
So I
more.
have this question. And I'll push back on it. I've been to Mission.
Yeah.
I feel like you are as unpolished or more unpolished than we are.
No, we are not.
Except for your music.
We are not entirely polished either. I'm not
It's not like
here I'm not comparing you and me per se.
I see. Because
I'm saying,
I feel like it, not, and I mean unpolished in a good way, not in a like, oh, you don't seem like you know what you're doing.
yeah, no, I've let things. I'm learning to let things go. There's a fountain in the front of our church, and the little pump got too much calcium in it. And I hate that it doesn't work. And I've intentionally looked at it over the last couple months and just said, that's not as important as other things right now.
Interesting.
And I've walked away and left it not working. Now, there's 10 years ago, the next day I would have fixed it no matter what.
Yeah. So when you say unpolished, can you kind of?
So I'm comparing. I'm saying like I'm admitting my little skepticism when it comes to Comer's movement.
Right.
Is it's perfect. It looks so good. It's so polished. The videos are beautiful. The books are beautiful.
It reminds me of Steve Yakeley. Yeah, he would fit in at Bridgetown.
Steve would.
We love you, Steve.
Hi, Steve. Steve and Bridgetown are a perfect fit. Right. And so what I'm saying is the reason that when if I were to look at the two movements and somebody were to say, where do people slow down and follow Jesus more? I would say the Village, because you guys do not present like that. You know, like there's an open backpack with wires sticking out of it on the floor right now, and
a stack of Legos,
and a kettlebell that I'm sure you've been lifting at some point.
I use every single day here.
Yeah, it's in our studio. This would never fly at Bridgetown.
No.
You know, and if
it's kind of the professor,
right?
Whatever.
Maybe it would fly. Maybe it would fly at Bridgetown. Maybe they just have one room that's perfect and everything's a mess.
People who don't know, I mean, it's in a place that is really on the edge of art and design, and so they are very minimalist.
Yeah.
So big white screen. The way they dress, everything is set. It seems curated,
very curated,
which is very millennial.
Yeah, and part of what feels so cool about it to me, right?
Right.
But I'm not, again, I relate, but I relate, but I'm a little skeptical because I look at you guys and I go, you're not, I know you're not flawless in this, but you're with people so much that a lot of other things slide.
Yeah. Well, I also learned that children destroy curating.
Yeah. Right.
right. If you have a child and you like I look at, if I dress really nice and I curate me, and then I hold a baby and they spit up on me, all of a sudden my curated self is destroyed.
So here's my question: is it possible that sometimes when people perceive John Mark Comer and Bridgetown and what they say about the way of Jesus, that curated simplicity is sometimes conflated with this life of following Jesus, that that sometimes that view of like it's got to look really nice and simple and clean becomes part of the definition.
Sure,
I think so. Maybe that's what I'm sensing.
But I will say I saw it was the Holy Spirit conference recently with them. Had N.T. Wright, who is in his late 70s.
Yeah.
Right. And so he's a boomer. Scruffy beard, but jacket, right? And no tie, but a collared shirt. So he looks kind of like the disheveled professor who dressed up, right? Looks like himself. Then you have John and Staten, and they look like they are perfectly curated outfits. Even
the partial unshavenness is the perfect amount of partial
epitome
unshavenness.
Of cool.
Yeah.
And then you have Tim Mackey, who's a Gen Xer, and he has disheveled hair. He's not he's wearing a sweater and a shirt, and he kind of looks like the Gen Xer who he's like, I don't care about any of this.
Okay.
So you have all the generations, but I think they all curated their look and the way they're appearing in front of a couple thousand people. So I think part of it is just we live in the generation and the things that we were created in our culture creates us, and those things they can't help themselves but dress that way. When I go to mission,
it's got me all over it. Yeah.
Well, no, I remember, and it doesn't happen this way as much, but for a while it was you and Mike wear Converse with rolled like jeans tucked up, and then your intern came who dresses completely different. And then one time I'm like, well, look at that. He has his cuffs up just like they do. And like, there's this cultural, like, oh, that's how I come here. Maybe I want Converse. Maybe I want to dress like that. Maybe I want to fit in. Like, I'm thinking that. I'm like, would I look good in Converse? That's part of it is just.
You know what I was thinking about the other day? I was like, I really was contemplating, is it time to accessorize? Should I wear like a chain or something like
Rod's cross?
Well, my version.
Your version.
Why do I care? But I really was. I was like,
I get it.
I was like, I don't know. I'm 42.
Is it time?
Is it time to accessorize?
Well, you are the John Mark Comer age. We heard he was 44.
So I need to be curated.
You do.
That's what's missing.
Yeah.
That's what's missing is I'm not curated enough.
Yeah.
Imagine how well I'd follow Jesus with a chain on. I don't know. That's funny. It is fun. I really was thinking about that. I was like, do I want to?
I feel like in my 40s, I thought a lot about that.
And then you matured and you moved on.
I just know it's not. I realize there's places I want to spend my money.
Yeah.
A little money I have. So.
And it's not on accessories.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what are we saying here?
I don't even know what this podcast was about, but I love talking to you. I love talking to you, and I love analyzing churches and things and how we do it, and it's fascinating to me. But in the end, it's just people, and people are lovely to be in the midst of, and also just it's really hard.
Oh, yeah. Well, I guess at the end of it all,
these processes, but in reality, it's people.
Right. That's so true, right? Like everybody reads the newest book by John Mark Comer, but we're all still gonna bring our interesting selves to the table, right? And it's gonna have to work out in a community, and some of us are gonna naturally, to some of us, the John Mark Comer book is gonna be like, yeah, that's it. To others of us, it's gonna push us, but we're supposed to do this together. You know what? And the other thing that worries me about all the movements and the new book and all that stuff is, and I say this as somebody who, dabbles in writing and all that, whatever.
Yeah.
Is that it's just that, what are we looking for? Like, are we not satisfied with the people in our lives or the church we have?
Yeah. Oh, when it comes to books and reading books,
or even, like the trends that, like, do we all secretly wish there was a Bridgetown, Tucson?
No, I don't. Well, maybe some other people.
I'm saying, dude, is that at the core for some folks?
Well, I mean, I think 20 plus years ago, we were talking about, Foster, Willard, and we were talking about Mark Driscoll and, Brian McLaren, and the new kind of Christian.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's always, every generation, when it comes to writing and now speaking in media, has its own voice.
Yeah.
And I think
that's natural.
And they're saying the same things, and they're going to add their twist to it.
Yeah.
But you need a new voice to say it.
Yeah.
I think Timothy needed to say Paul's stuff and in a new way. And Timothy had disciples, and they said stuff in a new way. And that's just how it works. I mean, I think it's how human beings work.
Yeah.
We bring our own creative force to old things.
Yeah. And there's and we do, rub off on one another. The village is a very Eric-shaped place, and I bet more people dress like you than you ever would have guessed, and
sure,
the same sort of thing. It's just does happen.
Everyone wears plaid shirts.
That's
the village.
I mean, it's how cultures work, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You want to fit there.
Yeah. Well, and culture always has more impact than anything else on us. So
that's,
it's like that, all that data So this is really a fascinating thing. We'll kind of close with this is that they did the study where they took people in the military, and they found that when they moved to bases where the city that the base was in had as low as 1% higher obesity rate than the previous base, those military people gained 5 to 10 pounds.
Yeah.
And it was not like it's just that culture eats more, and eventually if you're in that culture, you're going to eat more.
Right. Yeah.
And that's just like, and so, if you're around a bunch of people who are health conscious,
you will become health
you
conscious.
will become at some level. You may not,
maybe not to the same degree, but it will change you.
You will not go the other way. And if you are with a bunch of people who just love to go out to eat all the time and are unhealthy, even if you are health conscious, will move closer to that direction.
Well, this is critical. This actually might be one of the things that needs to be, this could be its own podcast, but this is just so true. I was talking to my daughter about an exchange student who was at her school who began to identify with American politics while here, and then moved back to his home country and ended up saying, yeah, I totally don't view it that way anymore, because he returned home, been around the people of his culture. And that's such an interesting case study because it's true. We think we have our own thoughts entirely. We think that this point of view is me, it is mine, it is what I have rationalized. No, that's not right. That's not true. It's been worked out over there have been studies, there have been you go saturate in another culture and you will begin to see some of what they see and you will change. And then you can go back and you'll change again. Like we are shaped by the culture we're in. Yeah. And that's just how it works.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so when you see people following Jesus in different ways, you have to factor in it's not just because you and they think so different. You're in different cultures.
Yeah. Oh, and this is why Peter is so, First Peter is just boom, boom, boom. Like you don't belong to this culture, and you can't allow this culture to influence you and shape you.
Yeah.
You have to walk in the way of the suffering Christ, and it is an entirely different culture.
And the church is supposed to create a new culture. The hard thing is churches all create their own unique cultures.
Yes, they do, and everyone has a unique culture.
Everybody does.
Yeah.
Well, at one of our classes recently, there's an interesting video about the prodigal son. Have you seen this or heard about this? So they read the prodigal son, or it was a teacher, I think it was a Lutheran guy, was talking about he had read the prodigal son to his class here in the States, and he had created a class he was going to teach some other places. And so the student, he said, so why is it that the son, runs out of food, or that he's has to go back to his father? And they said, well, he squandered.
He spent all
his money, right? And that was the consensus of the class. Okay. So then, if I remember right, was in some African country and teaches the same class. So why is it that the son didn't have anything to eat and had to go back to his father? Well, there was a famine. Consensus. They all saw the famine. And he says, guess what? It's in the text. There was a famine in the land, right? And they saw that. And then elsewhere, this was some country where there'd been like some kind of big social upheaval. The class was taught, and the consensus in the class was because no one would give him anything to eat. They saw that, and they all saw that. That was there's a famine. Sure, there's a famine. Did he squander it? Sure. But the real reason was because nobody shared. They were selfish. And he says, guess what? The text says that too. But depending on your culture, one of those stood out as not only like a top cause, but the only one.
Right.
Kind of interesting.
Right. And to go full circle, that is what biblical theology is understanding that people read texts through a cultural lens. Yeah. They hear things through a cultural lens.
Yeah. And you can't get in there experience, but you can do some work.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. And so
There you go. John Mark Comer.
concludes our podcast.
Hello, Cool J.
Thank you for making it through the end. If you made it here to the end,
Yeah, you're the real listener.
You are the real listener.
Yeah, and
And
you
we
should be
love
proud of
you.
yourself. And you should pat yourself on the back and send us a question, because we love to get your questions. faithoverbreakfast@gmail.com. Text us within the podcast apps. And we might just have a focused discussion on what you have to.
Or a very unfocused
Or
one.
you get what you get.
Yeah, you get what you get. It feels to me like it's been a long week, and I plopped down with the pastor,
Yeah.
like we're gonna have coffee, and we both are just like, and we start talking, and it's like we don't even know where we're going with this. It's just kind of cathartic.
But as we'll acknowledge on the front end, that's exactly what this show is supposed to be. So there you go. You got it. Eric and I had a talk,
Yeah.
and you got to hang out. Thanks for hanging out with us. So we'll see you next time.
Yeah. You've been listening to Faith Over Breakfast with Pastor Eric Siepen and Pastor Andy Littleton. Please share us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Thank you.